Oh, hello, and welcome to Al Dente Rigmortis. I'm Review Cultist.
I'm Mikey, the stands for evil.
And I'm the gamer in yellow.
And we're here to discuss those internet stories, most creepy and most pasta, and be critically silly doing it. And tonight we have, for the second time, yeah.
It's not the last time at all.
No. The last day of October, Short Hoggers, chapters 1 through 5. So, last day of October, Short Hoggers is by Pratt99. It's on Creepypasta.wiki along with all the other last day of October stories and all the other stories by Pratt. So you can check it out there. And yes, as the title I said demonstrates, we are only covering chapters 1 through 5 in this episode, and next week we will be covering chapters 6 through 9. Nice. But yeah, so it's a fairly long one, so we decided to cut it into 2 sections. Before we get too far ahead, initial recommendations in general for this one's going to be a little bit difficult or a little bit wishy-washy because we are
have half a story.
So for now, my initial recommendation is partial recommendation.
Mine is gonna be low partial.
Okay.
You know what? For full balance, I'll go high partial, just because.
Did you say full high partial?
Yeah. No, I will go high partial.
Okay.
Like, it's all right.
Yeah. Well, we'll dive into this story and find out, at least right now, why we're giving it that tentative partials of varying degrees. I love our system.
I don't.
It's just the best.
It's not.
But yeah, I guess we should kick this off with a rundown. So again, this covers chapters 1 through 5 of 9 chapters. The storm has kept up in Escard and Kess with Dr. Ackern and the Kobold kids, Duncan Skeeter and Pipsqueak McCone, along with Thomas Gregory, the owner of the Badger and Hare book and tea shop, and uncle to the McCone boys, are discussing the strange gem that tried to choke Kess from the end of Bookstore Horror, and seems to have brought on the previous story's flashback from the young Gurdon woman, that being the unquiet past and present.
Put 4 commas and periods in your own rundown.
Yeah. They also appear to be keeping something at bay beyond some door in the residence house area of the shop. That same horrid phantasm that entered the bookstore previously and assumed different forms for different people who saw it. They seem to believe it's an Eastern European-esque undead creature known as a taximare. The Kobold kids appear to have subdued it previously, bringing down some bookshelves and a ton of books on its head, at first supposedly killing it. However, it still seems to be stirring, likely from some healing amulet. Eventually,
Because they just dropped books on it.
They dropped it.
It's not like they double tapped it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's clearly this healing amulet that was probably dropped nearby it that resurrected it. Not
Totally.
It's just a pile of books.
Yeah,
they tried to shredder it from TMNT 2.
Oh my god, they did.
They tried to super shredder it.
Yeah. Now we know the Taximare is played by Kevin Nash.
Oh god. Taximare, you'll kill us all. So be it. Well, now we know what the kids were seeing when the Taximare showed. At least one of them. Oh God.
I don't know if that's a good sign that we're on this much of a tangent in the rundown.
Yeah. I can
I'll
already
shut
hear
up
the
now.
sirens. Yeah, I can hear the sirens of the tangent police arriving.
Yeah.
Eventually, something breaks through the door, but it is revealed to be Mrs. Gregory. Though she is also terrifying with her homemade beauty cream and cucumber eyes applied. Like I think straight up one of the kobold kids just like faints.
Yes.
Eventually, things get sorted out in a way, with authorities arriving, and though the weather is still quite terrible outside, Dr. Ackern makes his way home to look into some research regarding the amulet, and as the horror from earlier is still out there. Kess remains in the guest room of the Gregorys, and as she lies in bed, she begins to dream of another flashback, similar to the previous, but continues on into the events of the Ellie Lambert story, which Mikey and I covered a couple weeks ago. It's mostly the same story thus far. Basically, Kess was looking into the 3 missing British kids that Madame Mosley told her about back then, and that eventually brings her to the welcoming party at City Hall in Swanwick and the strangeness surrounding Ellie Lambert and her shapeshifting ability. And Kess's history with the short Hoggers, which is also a flashback moment as she falls asleep in her cottage later, thinking on those memories in her flashback. Bwah.
Ow, my brain.
The 5th chapter ends with Kess asleep in her bed in the flashback as the short hogger or something singing the same song as it sings, lurking in the woods near her cottage. To be continued. So yeah, that's what we got so far with the last day of October, Short Hoggers, chapters 1 through 5. So I suppose then we shall move on to everyone tolerates the Grand Inquisitions at this point. So I've got a few for chapter 1. Again, I assume that we all cut this into chapters.
Yes.
Excellent. So in chapter 1, I have this. It was also known the Gatekeeper's Cottage, although in actuality, it was little more than a door tucked away in a stone archway. So the issue here, as I feel that it should be, it was also known as the Gatekeeper's Cottage. It needs that "as" in there. Yeah. And then the next one I had, dodging behind his startled twin, his pale face peed out over Pipsqueak's shoulder with wide, terrified eyes. That would be so gross.
Did he really pee?
No, it's supposed to be like his pale face peeked over.
Oh my god, it did pee out.
Yeah,
Wow.
it does. Yeah. It's just 3 E's.
I did not see that.
Yep. But that's all I got for chapter 1. So, Mikey.
I'm good.
Okay, gamer.
Let's see. Okay, so the start of it saying like the bookstore owner's like residence was the first house behind the chamber's main entrance. It was also known as the Gatekeeper's Cottage, though in actuality it was a little more than a door. Blah blah blah. You said that already.
Yep.
However, it jumps down after that saying, seated in a plush chair, Kess took a glistening object. Blah 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 blah. So previously, Kess and everyone was in the bookstore.
Yeah.
And then the start of this describes the bookstore owner's residence, and then immediately cuts to Kess and everyone else that has been talking to Kess lately, which at first made me think it's like, okay, is she all of a sudden in the owner's house now with everyone else as well for some reason? Which she is, I guess, because it is said that later. But at the moment,
Yeah,
it kind of confused me because everyone was already sitting down in relative safety talking about all this, and now they decided to move over here to talk about this.
Yeah, don't worry. I was also confused because so this story seems to take place in like start in media res, or like starts in like some time has passed since like at least a few moments, or some amount of time has passed between like her having that poker chip sized gem in her throat and like all those people and some of that, and now we're in another part of the Badger and Hare book and tea shop, but it's like the like upstairs residence area. But it's also a house or a liminal space, like a dimensional like space or something.
No, it seems like they left the bookstore and went to the owner's residence, which is behind the chamber's main entrance, like up a staircase and in this liminal space area.
Yeah,
but it's a separate building.
Yeah, but they went upstairs from the bookstore or from the bookshop and went into this place.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like I think that's what's catching us is like that liminal space aspect of it.
It was all described, but there was no like transition to say that it happened. Like even something as simple as it's saying like inside, seated in a plush chair, Kess was blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
Because then it's like, okay, inside what was just described, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But because it just says Kess sitting in a chair, that could be a chair anywhere.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It could be outside or it could be it does eventually say, I think in the story, that like all the other, aside from like the kobold kids who are related to the owners of the bookstore, all the other people did like leave.
Yeah, so they probably had to like shut the store down or something, but yeah, they wanted to figure out what was going on, so they reconvened in relative privacy to discuss all this weird shit that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, a little transition would be nice, in my opinion.
Trust me, that there, I have issues with that in the story, like transitionary things in the story.
Yes,
so
for sure. Yeah, but my next one, I believe this is one of the kobolds, probably the Duncan guy, saying organizing all the brand new merchandise Uncle Greg just got today from the Mortal Territories, right? You see, rare vintage stuff like Mad Magazine, right? And U is YEW. My problem here is YEW sounds the exact same as YOU. So it should just be YOU because he's using it in the same context as YOU.
I guess so, yeah.
Because it doesn't sound any different. If you want to give him slang and make it like like you see.
Well, you have to add the earnest E to it, so it's a UC.
You.
Yeah,
exactly.
It needs like 15 more E's.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Or like if you're gonna go with that, you might as well just have it like YEEE, like YC.
Yeah.
Like if you want that accent, that kind of like British Gov accent.
Or even just YE.
Yeah.
YC.
Yeah.
Because YEW just sounds like YOU.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Sometimes Y.
Should also be noted that YEU or YEW is also the name of a tree.
Yeah, it's a type of wood, right?
Yeah, yew tree.
Well, maybe he's just pointing out that there's a yew tree nearby.
Oh, yeah, maybe, yeah. You ever think about that?
You know what? Somehow I didn't. I don't know. I don't understand why I missed that.
Yeah, weird.
Anyways, moving on.
Yeah.
However, unlike the taxum, who is usually an ordinary person longing for justice and is only dangerous to those against whom it seeks revenge and only move during the nocturnal hours and on foot, the taxumer is usually a wizard or sorcerer, but sometimes a witch who has its magical powers too unnaturally to prolong its life. That's all one sentence.
Oh my god! Wait, hang on. Oh yeah. However, unlike holy shit, that is 4 lines.
Yeah, 7 commas.
Yeah,
it's a bit long.
I mean, that is dialogue, but like, I mean, I have been guilty of nonstop talking like that, but damn.
Yeah. So like, it gets sort of a pass because it's dialogue, but
yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah,
he'd be running out of gas for sure.
He was definitely taking a breath after prolong his life. Usually they They come from noble elfin families. With it just keeps going.
Yeah, and that breath would be a period.
Yeah.
So the way I reroute it is the taxum are only dangerous to those against whom it seeks revenge, and can only move on foot and during nocturnal hours. Period. However, the taximere is usually a wizard, sorcerer, or sometimes a witch who has its magical powers to unnaturally prolong its life.
Yeah. That works.
And that's it for chapter 1.
All right. On to chapter 2. This one I have. And this is also technically dialogue, but I'm going to go into it. At what moment I was longing for a stick or any other weapon, but we had none of those things, and we were too scared to go back. So I feel like it's supposed to be at that moment I was longing for a stick, not at what moment I was. I guess like if it's like got like kind of an accented dialogue, I guess it could be like at what moment I was longing for a stick, but I still feel like it should be at that moment. So
it's like early on when the kobolds are talking, you don't really get the thick accent until the uncle says that they're basically from the country, and then all of a sudden the accent's
like
getting a little thicker.
Yeah, it's almost like oh, don't worry, they're from the country. It's like, all right, yeah, they're right, Golf, right, bro,
Yeah.
right, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, but that's all I got for chapter 2. So, Mikey,
I'm good.
Gamer,
I got one. And just rereading this to make sure I understand it. Okay, so they talked about the song, and then says more lore about what happened and what what Duncan specifically saw when he was like following it or something. And then he says, then it began singing that damn kid song in this high-pitched girly voice. I feel like at this point it should say, then it continued its song, adding more, because like
yeah,
since hearing Duncan starting to sing the song, the same start to the song again, I feel like the others would be like, yeah, we know, we heard it already. Because like he starts with the entire first like chorus all over again, and then goes into the part that's actually different. I feel like that also might be a good point for someone to interrupt him to say, yeah, we heard it already, and then he'd be like, no, it said more, it said something different, it said blah blah blah.
Yeah.
To add on to it and add in some more of the characters interacting.
Mm-hmm.
But that's about it.
Okay. Then on to chapter 3. I've got nothing. Mikey,
I got nothing.
Gamer,
Okay, I guess I'm doing it.
run, jump. I could be your backpack while you run.
Yeah, at least for grammar. After a brief scowl at the sudden clatter of rain against the window glass, she drew the covers over the chin and peered up at the ornate scallop headboard. I feel like it should be drew the covers over her chin, not over the chin.
Yes.
Yeah. I could take it or leave it, but like, yeah, like the over her chin does like fit better.
Yeah, like whose chin is she referring to then?
I mean, it's clearly hers, but like,
it's not. It's the.
Yeah, but it's a flavor of writing.
I don't know.
Yeah, but yeah, I'm also like siding with you on this. Was like I'd probably prefer it to be your chin or sorry, her chin. Yeah.
Yeah.
Over your chin.
Yeah, my chin. I wasn't there.
Yeah, you read the story, so like just like some covers start like creeping up over your chin.
Because I'm scared.
Yeah, exactly. No, just like a phantom blanket. Just like
Yeah.
Like as you're reading the story.
And he was never heard from again.
Yeah. As they just smother you. It's like sorry.
It's fine. But yeah, that's all I got for that chapter.
Okay. On to chapter 4, which has the bulk of my issues with grammar. Starting with this one. This was one of the strange and rather annoying of Swanwick customs. the whole notion that to even speak of an unwholesome spirit would bring it visiting, would bring it visiting. So I feel like if you should, I feel like the story should remove the of there before Swanwick. So it's like this was one of the strange and rather annoying Swanwick customs, not this was one of the strange and rather annoying of Swanwick customs.
Or of Swanwick's customs.
Yeah, or maybe even like one of Swanwick custom. Maybe
Actually,
I don't know.
I don't know.
I feel like the of does need to get removed though, because like this was one of the strange and rather annoying Swanwick customs.
Yeah, that is how I would write it myself.
Yeah,
But it's not wrong the way it is. So I'm gonna say I could take it or leave it, I guess.
the tables have turned.
Full page from
Yeah.
your book.
I learned it from watching you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, that notion, that whole notion of like don't speak something's name, otherwise you like inadvertently summon it. There's a little bit of actual thought time. It's like that is a very common thing across multiple cultures in folklore. Like you try to avoid saying something's like name, otherwise you might like draw its attention or its ire and summon it.
Yeah, I don't know what that could possibly. I've never seen that before. Me being the gamer in yellow.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's the obvious like the gamer like the King in Yellow stuff, but also like there's like I know like various Native American folklore and legends of like there's a reason why like certain monsters and beasties they don't like saying they don't like their names being like mentioned and stuff outside of like cultural appropriation. Like it's just like you just don't do that because it'll bring that negativity to the surface.
Yeah, they're just antisocial and they don't want to be popular.
Yeah. And then my next one here, I'm not going to read the whole paragraph. I have it's like basically 3 paragraphs I have issue with, but I'm not going to read all of it. But basically it's like Kess doubted this bound of secrecy would deter all unpleasant spirits, especially the live one that was right now following her as she towed her utility wagon cart along Main Street. And then it goes on it appears like as she's like going down Main Street with her cart, she has like a couple of like freeloading Fey hitchhikers and this Ellie Lambert character. And then it describes Ellie Lambert in detail. And then we are suddenly in a part at the welcoming party. So
with no transition.
Yeah, that's my big issue. Like, so there's a part here where in one paragraph, Kess is traveling down Main Street in Swanwick in her cart, in her hunt for the 3 missing kids, and apparently has some tag-alongs. Then it references Ellie Lambert in her description, and then we're just at the welcoming party, being held by the mayor, whom Kess previously expressed annoyance with. Like, these are 3 paragraphs, one after the other, and there's no seeming segue between them, except for Ellie Lambert's description.
I feel like this is a perfect spot to have a chapter break, considering we're using chapters.
Yes, you're goddamn right. Especially since because it's not even like suddenly we're in a new scene. Suddenly we're in a whole new event. In the story
has passed. For example, when she said okay, I'm going to go out and ask people around the town, I imagined her walking around, knocking on doors, talking to people, sitting down with people, talking to them, and then all of a sudden it's described that she has been pulling a cart, which I'm assuming she has a car to do so, unless she's just pulling the cart herself like a boss. I don't know. And then all of a sudden, she's at a party that is just kind of dropped there for reasons.
Well, so here's the thing that whole party sequence, and then basically everything moving forward into chapter 4 and 5 are basically the Ellie Lambert story.
Yeah.
And everything before that was actually something new, and then it just sort of there was no transition between her walking around town doing her stuff, and then suddenly just oh, I guess we're at the party now, and I'm just going to copy paste this story in here. Just going to wedge this. I'm just going to wedge this old story into this new story. No.
So here's the thing.
Yeah.
This is all happening during a dream. So this is dream logic.
You know what? I
So
actually
it
have that in
blending
my notes.
together, it blending
Yeah.
together without reason is logical and reasonable in a dream.
You're
Like,
absolutely right. Yeah.
I would theoretically give it to this part if that's intended, but it's still like adding an extra headache layer on top of
Yeah,
my
like
already
there's
existing headache of like trying to figure all this stuff out.
yeah, like there obviously like you're right, like this is like a dream sequence. So like this is very dream logic-y, like transition-y. Like they're like with no transition, you're just like, oh, I was like on the main street and now I'm in a party. Like that's very dream logic-y. But for a story that somebody is reading, and you want them to like have the best chance of understanding like the narrative and plot and like the progression of things, throw in at least like a word or something, like a mention that like, oh shit, I gotta get ready for this party I'm supposed to be attending at the mayor's city hall thing. Duh. And then like some even like something like that, like along those lines, before you
Yeah,
just dive into the party.
and if it is meant to be a scene blending dreamscape of a memory,
Yeah.
then technically mission accomplished, because after I got finished reading this, that is what it felt like. But
Yeah.
I feel like but if it's meant to feel more like an accurate memory of what happened, then there do need to be some transitions and explanations of what's happening. Though if it is meant to be dreamscapey, I still think there needs to be a little explanation of the whole dreamy transition between scenes, like just something like
You know, the
like
story
in
sorry.
regards to Ellie Lambert, it's saying
Yeah.
like where did she first start talking to about her? Like it sounded like
She
it
was
went
referencing
there's
her. Yeah.
yes,
Sorry.
but it's like there's hitchhikers, and then all of a sudden it brings up Ellie Lambert, which made me think that she was a hitchhiker,
Yeah. But oh
but she
no, so,
wasn't. She
like
was at the
yeah.
party.
Yeah, but like it does say like because what I said earlier. So like Kess doubted the unpleasant spirits, especially the live one that was right now following her as she towed her utility wagon cart along Main Street, which I assume is Ellie Lambert following her.
Yeah, okay, so
But
she
so there
was
should
doing that.
yeah, so there actually should have been a sentence or two like that shows like that has an interaction with Kess and Ellie outside in the town. Like hey, like maybe Elliot's like, hey, are you gonna go to that? Are you going to that party up in City Hall? Like that kind of thing, like trying to be like kind of being like awkward and like have like an awkward interaction between Ellie and Kess, or like have Kess like mention something a little bit more about Ellie, before we dive into the party, because and have Ellie Lambert be the link between like that Main Street scene and the I keep wanting to say the wedding and the welcoming scene, the welcoming party scene. So like, yeah, it's just so like again dream logically disjointed, but like I feel like there is a route here, like there is a means in this writing that you could add a little bit extra to like properly segue these two scenes together.
Right now, it's a little messy to get through it, but with a few words here and there, you can cement it as like factual memory, like that moves normally, or cement it as this is a dream and it's supposed to be this way. Right
Yeah.
now, it's kind of in like the weird like middle ground where we don't know which way it's supposed to be.
Yeah, because like
Kind of needs to commit.
yeah, at this point right now, for me as somebody who's read the previous story that like the Ellie Lambert stuff all comes from, this feels literally like the story was just like it's just copy and pasted, like just dropped in the
Which it
middle
may
of
have
something.
been.
Which yeah, but like you need to like once you drop something like that into a story, that's fine. Like if you want to like elaborate around the story, but you do need to like smooth out those edges and like blend things together a little bit in the writing,
Yeah,
so that
like
it works.
for the blend, like it could be like she's pulling the cart and then looking back, seeing Ellie Lambert, and then like thinks about her friend, how her friend was talking about Ellie at the party, and
Yeah.
then through that mention of thinking about that, the scene blends to her at the party.
Oh god, so
Without
we have another
stop.
flashback.
Well, no, it's not. It's
Yeah,
flash
yeah.
forward, because this
Yeah,
whole
that's true.
thing
Yeah.
is it's basically you're she's in a dream remembering these events, but not necessarily remembering them second by second. It's just like,
Yeah.
oh, I went and did this and then I did this, but the
Yeah.
space in between doesn't matter, so that part just kind of blends together. It's equivalent to like looking back at Ellie and be like, ah, shit, and then looking forward to where her steering wheel is, but it's actually the mayor's daughter that she's talking to at the party. Like
Yeah.
that kind of a blend, which it would be very dreamlike.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But it needs to commit, basically. That's the
Yeah,
TLDR of this.
Yep. That yeah,
One way or
exactly.
another.
Yeah. But that is all I have for chapter 4. So, Mikey.
I'm good.
Okay, Gamer.
This is, I forget where it is. Doesn't matter. Do you have any more news articles from that time period? Kess said. Not sure if that's a nitpick or not, but I feel like it should be Kess asked, since she's asking and not saying a statement.
Yeah, I mean, like it. It's not
She
quite
is saying it with
yeah.
words, you know.
Like it's not quite a take it or leave it, but like yeah, like the more elegant way to say that would be to ask, not
Yeah.
said. Yeah.
And the other thing is the scene blending together thing that I jumped in a
Yeah.
lot on.
Yeah,
So, yes.
no, that was a pretty good like that's the bulk of my issues with like the writing was just that let me just shoehorn in this story and not blend it together. So, but yeah, but we just talked about that. So, on to chapter 5. I got nothing, Mikey.
I'm good.
Gamer.
Christ, guys.
I think
everything around here.
I think specifically at this one because like me and Mikey have both like said our piece about chapter of these parts because these were from the Ellie Lambert story.
Like including the exact same grammatical issues as well.
It's the exact same.
Okay.
Like I read over, I well, as far as I could deduce, like I skimmed over the Ellie Lambert story just to make sure. Like it's like this seems awfully familiar, and then it's like no, this basically seems to be word for word.
Okay.
Yeah.
Either way, I have one for chapter 5, and it's what I say wasn't a slovenly dressed girl with an empty flat face of a large baby.
Yeah. Yes.
What I saw.
Yeah. Yep. We got that one.
I figured as much because you were interrupting.
I know. I'm sorry. I was like, nope, shut up.
It's fine.
I was saying shut up to myself, not you.
Too late. I've already shut up.
No.
I say as I'm saying words.
Yep.
Hey.
Okay. So Mikey, we have a conjunction junction for this one?
Yes.
All right. And next stop, conjunction junction. Doot, doot.
Chapter 1. It was now 9 o'clock, and the storm continued on unabated. It also seemed to be part of an entirely separate city and country, with the majority of inhabitants casually going about their daily lives, similar to inhabitants within Escard itself. It was also known the Gatekeeper's Cottage, although in actuality it was little more than a door tucked away in a stone archway. It did look like a poker chip, like the kobold lad had said, and probably would be deemed the most expensive in the world by Guinness Book of World Records standards. So let me get this straight, said the kobold lad, whose name was Duncan McCone. So is that fake eyeball thingamabob the genie ghost then? The blonde twin named Skeeter asked suddenly. And then at the crystal eye, and then back at Kess. And I believe you, said Mr. Gregory as he did some last-minute sorting. So it was just us free sorting stuff. So that thing is... And just what is a Texamare anyway, she asked. And to make matters even worse, they are driven by an eternal and insatiable hunger to devour other souls, living or dead, in order to try to preserve themselves. It's not something people want to talk about, especially with outsiders who might find the prospect of a witch hunt utterly aberrant. It's a country term for toad, Mr. Gregory explained. And it was grotty, Picksqueak chimed in. And I didn't see no girl. But he eventually answered, like I said before, I saw a demon, and not just any old demon with fiery eyes and fangs and claws. This thing was far worse. It's got no face. It's got no face. It's like something out of a madman's dream, or some nameless dark dimension. Chapter 2. So while I was thrashing around trying to get free, Skeet and Pip got off. I assumed to fetch help, but they was actually playing detective and following someone in an orange poncho. And smelled gross and all, Pipsqueak added, fanning his nose with grimace. So what kind of weird tune exactly? It just kept going on and on, Skeeter resumed the tale, and we couldn't tell if it was a lady or a lad, because there was a different person's voice with each word. And shortly after it went through the doorway, the singing suddenly stopped, as if shut off by an electrical switch. So we marched steadily up the rest of the hall, and in less than a minute we were standing just inside the room. So as we was backing out the place when we heard a very faint noise, like wind whistling through a crack or a mouse squeaking. It just stood there in the doorway, this plain Jane staring back at us, with this cheesy smile plastered on her face, smelling downright awful. And to make it even more repulsive, Skeeter declared, it seemed to be trying to probe our brains with its thought tentacles, or something, trying to force us to be its friend, even though we were grossed out to the point of puking our guts out. And when we saw that, so I ran over and kicked it in the rear, hard. It didn't even look remotely human. And what happened next? So, it's dead then? It's pretty damn awful. But there are some things in this world that a bloke should never know and see. That horror back there in the tower room is both those things. But didn't you just say it was dead? It's kind of complicated. It would spare you a lot of further embarrassment. It's up and walking again. So, what difference? But that thing's dead already. It's a role-playing game, popular among humans. But Duncan was no longer looking at her. Instead, he was staring in gaping horror over her shoulder. It's late! Chapter 3. It was nearly midnight by the time Cass crawled into bed in the Gregory's guest room. It had to have been a ghost, Cass told Dr. Ackern shortly before he left for home, or a djinn even. It could have ended up underneath one of the shelves or wedged in one of the books. So it decided to leave once the coast was clear. So I don't think I need to commute all the way across America to find out about Skeeter's bauble. And try not to call up any eldritch abomination while you're at it. It said, "Psst, Chapter 4. It was a Saturday afternoon in the local Swanwick Library, and Kess was frustrated. And due to our beloved Mayor Desrosiers' decision that the money is best spent on frivolous items such as landscaping, koi ponds, and impressing the toffee-nosed poshers. But that explanation would take a whole day to explain, and would only lead to numerous probing questions. It's just that someone told me this story about these mutated wizard monsters that supposedly made off with these 3 British kids. I just wanted to know if it was all true. And the thing about those kids disappearing turned out to be true. She took a sip from her coffee mug. And there was even some talk about them running to join a skilk band. But it's not just me who notices this. Because her aunt happened to be a very prominent business person, was Vanessa's immediate answer, and she doesn't trust Ellie to be left alone in the same room with a purse, or alone in a coach, and certainly never in the house. But why send her here? So when it does happen, it's actually cause for celebration. But Mayor Desrosiers didn't notice. It's just that, or as Yoda would say, the weeaboo vibe is strong in this one. And when Vanessa asked if she wanted to come to a Gothic theater production of a famous horror movie, Kess immediately accepted. It turned out the show was taking place in Vanessa's backyard, and it was a reinterpretation of John Carpenter's The Thing. It was like when The Thing took over a body, it left just enough of the host's consciousness so that the imitation still felt like the original. Chapter 5. It all started back a few years ago. So unfriendly, superficial, and self-absorbed. And I'm like, what? It was the fat one who spoke up next. But that Van Devereaux girl looks feeble-minded. But I swear I just saw it was starting to be a pretty good place to live, although I still didn't like Des Moines New. But one miserable wet night, miserable wet nights, when the streets were generally deserted, something would wander near the apartment complex and sing in this phlegmy burble. It seemed a mild-mannered spook, and most of the residents along with that particular street were used to it, treating it as a trifling nightly inconvenience, even going so far as accepting it as a rather eccentric member of the neighborhood. But as the weeks went by, I eventually got used to it. So when everyone was out at a movie one Halloween night, she called that something in. But a person just can't keep quiet about that sort of thing. But that wasn't why I left Merlia, Kess went on slowly. It would always leave in the morning, and all the wicker wood or couches that would all be soaked in black, oily slime, unfit for anything but the bonfire. But I felt it was all worth it after my harrowing experience in West Des Moines New. But It wasn't about an illegal substance. It was about my roommate seeing the short hoggers. And when she finally told us the story, a shiver of cold horror ran through me. It was squirming and twisting around in a chair, she stammered. But I ran back inside and locked the door. Its face. And I knew there was something hiding behind it, something even more terrible. So that everyone is my story, and I know nothing more than what I just experienced. To be continued.
Wow. I've got some
Second
notes.
rundown.
Well, first off, it definitely felt like a just stripped down version of the rundown. Especially and like I have a few notes in chapters 1 through 1, 2, and 3 that you did. So chapter 1, the gatekeeper's cottage looks like a poker chip. Like, or is it the size of a poker chip?
He was saying like he was talking about the rain and like talking about it being like like spanning entire countries, like this huge storm that's happening, and it is shaped like a poker chip.
Yeah,
That's how I saw it.
Well, that's like that's how the storm's able to like cover over like a huge country. The country's just really small. And then in chapter 2, Skeeter and Pipsqueak, like help. It was like basically Skeeter and Pipsqueak got off. Ew.
How dare you?
Just like also there's a lot of dialogue in this, so like I'm willing to give this a pass in terms of like conjunction junctions, just saying. But
I mean, yeah,
like because
like
we use its and ands and buts and shit like that in our dialogue all the fucking time, so
yeah. Because realistically, Mikey grabs all these sentences throughout the story that start with its, ands, or buts because there's always better words to use, generally, except dialogue, which is 90% of the story.
Yeah. And my last commentary to the conjunction junction here is on chapter 3, when you're talking about like it's like it was probably some kind of ghost or djinn or thing, and then it probably wedged itself under the shelves or in some books. I'm just imagining like a large djinn or like a genie or like a large ghost just like trying to cram itself into a book to hide. So, but yeah, I guess that was our conjunction junction. So. On to actual thoughts then. And I think we should start with the photos or the images that were used in the story. Just throughout. Again, like it's not none of them. I don't think many of them are like original pieces. Perhaps they were, but most of them seem like they're pulled from other sources, and their photos and such. Which is like basically a lot of
like,
photos.
They're not signed, you know.
Yeah. Well, the one, even the one like pencil drawing of like an eye with a skull in it, like it looks like it's a different person because it's got like a signature at the bottom. But,
some ones further down, like chapter 4 and 5, they might actually be done for this purpose.
Perhaps, yeah. Like, well, those ones look like they're it's a different. Oh no, it's the same. Maybe it is this. I'm not sure if it's M. Pratt or not. It's just because it's the same, like that same signature from the eyeball pencil sketch, which is it doesn't seem to be M. Pratt's usual style. So maybe, but it is like also like it almost looks like a woodcut style of like inking and printing. So
I know exactly what I'm talking about, but I don't.
Oh, like basically like they make a pattern in like some in like a wood. They carve out like a pattern or an image in a wood block, and then you put like ink on it, and then you put that ink on a piece of paper to make like a print. Basically, it's like a very early crude version of a printing press.
Really,
kind of situation. Yeah. I mean, like again, like a lot of the photos, like they do seem to like match the situation at hand. Like again, like. Seeing some of these like the older photos of the town, or even like some of the illustrations of the town with all the books and some of that. And certainly all the book photos definitely capture the sense that like Yeah, they're still in that bookstore kind of thing, or that they're in that bookstore environment for a lot of it. And even like the later ones with like the fire, like all the kids, the silhouettes looking at a fire, like that's right around the time when like the the John Carpenter play ends up like burning down a couple of places, a couple of things. So and the kids look on, so it's like it makes sense. So yeah, it seems like the photos are appropriate. I feel.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And that's all I got to say about the images. So moving on to chapter 1, which is titled Chamber of Escalier, or Escaliers. Probably Escalier with like an accent. um,
Sound like Mr. Walken's or Arnold's.
Escalier. Yeah. Chamber of Escalier.
There you go.
Chamber of Escalier. Try to do like a Schwarzenegger and a Walken.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, moving on. So here's my comment here. Most of these folk there were house and woodland fairies, although there were outsiders such as Dr. Ackern, who used one of the basement doors below the park as a shortcut to and from home. So yeah, this whole like Chamber of Escalier is bringing to mind that house that was mentioned in the flashback from the previous story, the Unquiet Past and Present. Like that house I do in quotes of many halls and doorways to other places. So I was like wondering, is this like a similar place? Is it the same place? And like I'm not exactly sure if it's the same. But like Dr. Ackern also references a jump station near his house that he can go to, like he can like basically go through to get to like Miskatonic University to look up some like some book material. So like, is that what that place is basically? Like it's like a jump station, like yeah, because it's like basically a dimensional terminal.
Maybe. We have so little information about it, it's hard to know.
Yeah. But at the very same time, like I do love this, like these liminal spaces they throw into the story. It's just like, oh yes, liminal space. It's in right now. It's awesome. But I'll move on to the next thing I have here. If this was the very same thing that came into her possession 3 years prior, she had more to worry about than just a streak of bad luck at the poker table. Bam! We now have confirmation that the last story was a flashback story, and that the disc-like object was likely the same as this one. Though that doesn't explain the color change from blue to green.
Yeah, I'm just going to assume that image from the previous one is just like, it's like this but green.
Yeah.
Is what it's meant to be.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Yeah, not. I have a note that the description for this would benefit better if there was continuity between stories. Like, like we can't confirm or deny that this is the same one from previous stories, or even the same one from the previous section when they're in the library. Or
well, even in this story, like I mean, she is kind of like, it's like she's even wondering, like, is this the same one? Like, is this the same thing? It looks very similar. My memory's a little foggy. Was it always blue or was it green?
She never says blue.
No, but in the previous, no, I know, but in the previous, well, in the other story, like, she describes it as being like that type of shell, which is we found out was mostly blue in color. Like that's in the story.
It's like, maybe it's just like the design of it. It's not necessarily the color.
Maybe.
I don't know.
Also, the image being used, like, yeah, it's like, all right, it, like, could have just easily been like color corrected.
Yeah. Just a little bit of a hue change on that, and it's good to go.
Yeah. But I'll move on to the next thing I have here. Due to their long hair, Kess had mistook the twins as girls until Dr. Ackern had explained to her it was customary among kobolds of the Valar River region to let their children's hair grow long until they reach the age of 14. So I guess they're closer to the original, like kind of folkloric version of kobolds than to D&D ones.
Dog kobolds.
Though now, or dog kobolds. Yeah, like Eastern, the more like Eastern interpretation. Although now I want to like see a draconic kobold with a Fabio-esque like hairline. It's like is it a wig? Is it like just like a potion that they put on their like a potion of hair growing on their scalp? But yeah. Move on to the next thing I have here.
Or it's like feathers. It's like a raptor situation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. The next thing I have here is you probably heard about that missing Einsel girl they found at the Willowdale station. Nothing but a drained skeletal husk. She was a taximare probably, or the taximare probably was interrupted in its feeding, or it wouldn't have left any evidence behind. So this is like the first mention of the Chanterelles, and now a connection to poor Crissa from the previous story. And this story is wasting no time in connecting various mystery horrors from previous stories together. I'm loving this. Like, we're actually getting like connections from the previous version, the previous stories of like, oh yeah, it was like that the Chanterelles were a taximare and they were tied to that what happened to that poor Einsel girl, and it's like, oh cool, like we're getting more of that. Like we're getting more like kind of connective threads.
I hate to say it.
Uh-oh.
He's just, he doesn't necessarily know for a fact that was a taximare that did that, because like he's just a random uncle. He's not all knowing.
Let me have this, please.
No, but what I'm saying is it's a good thing, because it's more realistic, where he's like, well, maybe that's what the taximare is and did that, because he doesn't know. He wasn't there.
That's true. And also, like, I like how like some of the characters like, what the hell's a taximare? Like, I've heard of like taxims, but I've never heard of a taximare. So I do like yeah, like you said, like the characters aren't like all knowing of knowledge. They are like they're speculating on things too. And they're also dropping some deep cuts of folklore from the north of Europe. As we get into the next thing here, which is I've heard of Draugr and Hogbui, said Dr. Ackern with a shiver, but I've never heard of a taximare. So I have heard of Draugr, but I've never heard of Hogbui. So Hogbuis are mound dwellers, or dead bodies living on within its tomb. Notable difference between them and a Draugr was that a Hogbui, and I'm probably saying that wrong, but is unable to leave their gravesite and can only attack those who trespass upon their territory. Whereas a Draugr is usually like can move around and like try to get into people's homes and such. The whole taximare thing is also just a cool derivation of like Eastern European folklore, like the taxim, which is like basically a type of undead in Eastern European countries, and mare, it might also be like the Mara, which is another type of undead creature from like it's basically an undead Vossen, and so like you basically it seems like I couldn't find anything on like taximare specifically, but I was able to find things about on taxims and mares. So it seems like this might be a combination of the two like entities into one thing, which is basically just like again a lich-like undead creature.
Also, with the amount of like unique like fantasy creatures being introduced in this series, it's not far-fetched for it to just be a completely unique creature.
Yeah, but I do like to check whenever I come across one. Just it's like, oh, I don't recognize that one. I'm going to see if that's an original or if that's something that she pulled from actual folklore, because that would be cool.
Well, a little bit of both.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then my next thing here, this is the last one I have for chapter 1. She wasn't that puddock looking, Skeeter argued. She looked more like a mousy 7th grader with short dark hair. She kind of had an underbite. Oh, and she was wearing an orange raincoat. Kess regarded him with an owlish stare. An orange raincoat? Yeah, one of those floppy tent things that with a hood and no sleeves. Poncho? Prompted his uncle. Yeah, poncho. That's it. So again, more connections and verifications that like this time it's of the creature that assumes different visages and forms depending on who sees it, which we saw in bookstore horror when it seemed Kess saw something different, and then Dr. Akron saw something different from this apparition that showed up in the bookstore. Also, this kind of reminded me of the thing from the Walk Through the Woods story in Curtisville a couple of weeks ago we covered. Or The Way Through the Woods, I think is the story. That was the story's title. And so where like they go into like they find that like that house in the woods that like the trail like led them to, and each one of them had like a different like each one of them saw a different thing like coming out of the house. So I have to wonder if that's possibly connected to this as well. Like if this is like a similar creature that like just made its way to Curtisville and into the mortal territories, as they call it. But
Entirely possible.
yeah, again, I got a corkboard here with like a lot of red string.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. I'm just chomping at the bit. But yeah, that's the end of my notes for chapter 1. So, Mikey.
All right. So my note was in regards to my sort of headcanon for the series. So the previous story, or the one that this is a sequel to, is about a bookstore. And in that, if I recall correctly, I remember that Kess was reading a book in the bookstore, which honestly seemed a bit odd because typically if you start reading a book in the bookstore, somebody will come and yell at you and say, "Hey, don't just read it, buy it."
I'm actually going to counter you with that because there are some antique bookstores and stuff that have like a lounging area for you to peruse the books before you buy. So it actually isn't that uncommon in various like in certain bookstores, and like especially like I think in like in the older kind of bookshops.
Hiding upstairs or whatever, like away from everybody else to like sneakily do it though.
I don't know, like, but there's like lounging chairs and stuff like that to read. So I think it's more. I think it's a little bit more common than you think. In terms of like an etiquette. I mean, like in Chapters and Indigo, like newer bookstores, that yeah, like, absolutely, like, they don't want you to do that. But like in older bookstores, like they're not as concerned with that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, and then the other thing is in this is that we get a tower library. Now, that's sort of a conflict of interest because if you have a library beside a bookstore,
I
you're
mean,
you're
like,
gonna
yeah,
you're gonna get people potentially just well, it's gonna get muddled, is
yeah,
what I'm saying.
yeah, for sure.
So
Yeah,
so the confusion is like, well, is it a bookstore or library? Like that's
or
where my mind went. Like, is it the author confused as to what a bookstore and library are? Because I mean, this store does have a cafe off it, so it's technically a store.
yeah,
Beside the library, technic or store,
or
but then
um,
they also sell comic books.
yeah. My thing
Uh,
here also is, or are we not fluent enough with like vernacular for like what people like do, like, because this is supposed to be set in like a very first off, it's set in fairy, it's set in some other magical world or like some like other reality, but that region is also heavily inspired by seems to be heavily inspired by like British stuff. So like is a bookshop or a book and tea shop just a library in like the UK or in like in those parts of the world, and we're just not aware of that because we're people from Canada or North America.
Possible.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure. Like, yeah, it
I don't
might
know.
be or may not be. Like, because like, yeah, the tea shop added onto the bookshop for me implies that it might also like that might just be like kind of a small like library kind of thing situation where it's like where you go and get a book and like either rent it out or buy it, and then but you also have tea. So like it's sort of a lounging space what you can read books in. So is that just another are they misusing the word bookshop, or is that just a term that we're not familiar with for like a library like situation?
Yeah,
But I don't know. Yeah.
it's a bit of confusion.
Yeah.
Or at least for me anyway. Um, and that's all that I have left for chapter 1.
Okay. Then gamer.
Quick Google. There is a novelty. It's called Novelty TEA
Yeah.
Bookstore Cafe.
Okay.
And
yeah. See, like, yeah. Sorry.
yeah, like you can buy books there and have coffee. So it's a thing apparently.
Because like actually because I bring this up also because so I've been on One Less Die or actually not on One Less Die when I've been running a Dresden Files game on RPX of late, and in that game there is like we set up like one of the players like added that there was like a book coffee a book cafe or like a bookshop cafe, and the way they keep describing it in the setting. I interpret it as being like a bookstore with a little cafe thing or like a little like bar even. But the way they keep describing it is like, oh, I'm just gonna go into the library and like check for books. Like, so like, I think that is actually a thing that's out there, where it's like, yeah, like a library and a cafe, or a bookshelf where you get a book or and then like sit down and read it with like coffee and stuff. So
Possibly. Also, I was reading over my first note, which is about the blue or green chip, whichever one it was, and we already kind of talked about that.
gotcha.
Oh, actually, no. Hang on.
We're going back to that.
Yeah, we actually are. We legit are. Okay, so this note is twofold. First, when I'm reading it, I'm doing this in the order that I read it. It says it did look like a poker chip, like Kobold Lad had said, and probably deemed most expensive. Blah 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 blah. If it's the very same that came to her possession 3 years prior, she had more to worry about than just struck bad luck at the poker table. So that itself confirmed that it's the same object because it said came back to her. Okay.
Yeah.
So at that point, I was like, okay, fine. The previous entry's picture just should be green, whatever. But then a few lines later, it says, this one's silvery blue and flat. The other one that acted like a bodyguard was like a real eyeball.
Oh,
only he flew and glowed green.
that's
So
that's the spirit ally that she was referencing in the previous one as well.
probably actually,
Yeah.
But this is the problem, though. They fucking called the thing emerald-like before in the previous one.
Yeah.
But this one says
Mhm.
this one's silvery blue and flat, like the actual image.
Oh no!
So do I go with the image or do I go with what they say?
Pratt,
Mhm.
you continuity.
Yeah, because
Mhm.
like they say it's that's like an emerald. That's not like any emerald I've seen. This one's blue.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not an emerald at all, Skeeter. It's a fucking sapphire.
Like, what the hell's wrong with you?
I don't know. But yeah, I'm done talking about that shit. I'd give up on that.
Okay.
But so the characters start talking about what they see with the orange code, the orange poncho person. We get what like Kess's whole backstory with the creature, and then what Dr. Akron said, and then it says then he nodded towards the McCone trio. Even my nephews have something to add to this series of strange, curious events. I'm like, okay, so before we get any explanation or closure on like this storm of countless weird events happening, here's some more. Like,
yeah. Yep.
because like it just keeps throwing like the creature did this to me. It looked like this to me. It's like it just keeps going on and on.
It
It's
just
like, oh,
keeps
these
stacking.
guys they saw it differently too. This is how they saw it. It's like I was just at that point when it started mentioning that the kids also want to say what they saw. I'm like, I just want to know what it is. Just tell me what it is.
Just
Move
give
forward.
me just give me a straight answer.
Yeah,
Poor gamer.
it's fine.
It's like a Jenga tower. Just keep adding.
Pretty much. But yeah. And my only other one is says that troll woman told me about them. Kess told them. Told him rather. Although she never told me what they were called, I just thought she was talking about vampires. And then Duncan responds by saying, "Lords and ladies love a duck. Vampires?" Yeah. Like, is Lords and Ladies Love a Duck an exclamation or something in this world?
I've actually heard so in Australia I've actually heard Australians say "love a duck."
Like, okay.
As a term.
Heard,
Lord, yeah. Sorry.
I've heard Lord Love a Duck. Yeah.
Oh, really? So, okay, yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
So it's just
I've heard fuck a duck before too, actually, now that I think about it.
So it's basically just like the same, like it's just regional dialects of the same like saying. Phrase.
Yeah,
just an exclamation of someone. It's like what the like. It's like what the. Oh, you know what it comes from? Fuck! It comes from what the fuck.
Yeah, it's like just, ladies and gentlemen, what the fuck?
Yeah, except you don't want to swear, so you say love a duck or like what the duck.
Yeah,
or it's like what the fudge kind of thing. It's it's the same kind of like instead of swearing outright with like the profanity, you just add duck.
Yeah, and I guess as a child. A teenager or whatever he is, he doesn't necessarily want to swear in front of his uncle.
Yeah, or he's just used to that version because like his parents or the adults were saying that rather than like the swear. So
yeah.
Well, I like how it took me like in this moment I realized, oh wait, love a duck is just what the fuck.
Yeah.
God damn.
But that's all I got for chapter 1.
All right, on to chapter 2, The Revenant. Not to be confused with the Leonardo DiCaprio movie, The Revenant. But yeah,
no one saw that.
No.
I actually don't know if it's popular or not. To be honest, I don't even know the movie.
It's actually very popular, and like DiCaprio gets like mauled by a bear.
Hell yeah.
Anyway, moving on. And speaking of movie lines and shit, I'm gonna start with this quote here and have a comment to it. Well, we was scrambling like frightened squirrels up the shelves with the thing clawing at our heels when Duncan suddenly came barreling in. I guess he was a mite peeved at us for leaving him stuck it like that. Well, as soon as he saw the thing, he just kicked it straight across the room. Well, that was mighty courageous of him, Dr. Ackern murmured. Mummered.
All dressed up and everything?
Yeah. Well, that was mighty courageous of him, Dr. Ackern murmured with admiration. Mr. Gregory merely nodded and grunted his approval. And all I could think of was Duncan's like, it is Escard! Boot! just jumps in and just like takes a step and just like does this is Sparta boot at the creature.
Not inaccurate.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But the next thing I have here, never seen a dead lich monster before, except maybe in a museum or in an Adventure Time movie. Even in the lands of fairy, they still have cartoons. Actually, they have a lot of pop culture from Earth.
I'm surprised he doesn't mention that in a video game.
Yeah.
I guess they do drop D&D as well.
Well, and the kids don't know what D&D is. Like, Kess has to explain it, which is actually in my notes coming up. But I'll get to that in a second. So the next thing I have here is, no, don't! Duncan suddenly lunged forward, knocking aside the doctor, who was flung headfirst into a towering indoor Grudan creeper. Duncan, you bloody idiot! Mr. Gregory shouted as he hurried over to extricate Dr. Ackern from the hairy green tendrils. I'm sorry, what now? Wait, is this that plant monster from the earlier Curtisville story that we covered? I think it was the Farliath it was in, where like a green monster, like a plant monster, like grabbed him, because I think they referenced it. It was an invasive species from the land of fairy. As well, or from
like one of them in the world.
Well, no, I'm not saying is like so do they also domesticate these and turn them into house plants?
Yes, because one from the previous story was just like outside, like someone's house, like down, like walking down the street. It's on like next to their fence, basically. Like it's not
it's basically
weird.
like it's just sort of like a wild like weed kind of thing that it evolved into, or has become in the Curtisville story. But in this one,
it sounded like they planted it on purpose as security measures.
Oh, right, yeah, you're right, yeah.
I don't fully remember, but
it has been a hot while. It's been a hot minute. So, but yeah, yeah. So I just I was trying to is that what this thing that's called, a Gruden creeper or a Gruden creep? So yeah, I just like the idea again, just Dr. Hacker just gets lobbed into an accident, a Venus house plant.
Yeah, pretty much.
Basically, yeah. And then my next thing here, what serious mistake? Kess inquired, putting her hands on her hips, like using paperback novels for weapons instead of heavy-duty hardbacks. No, more like accidentally dropping your golden ammonite shell healing amulet keychain into the book pile. Dr. Akron went on, then being too scared to retrieve it. Okay, so there's do one of the boys have a gold ammonite healing amulet keychain?
They do now. The plot demands it.
I get, yeah, no, that's honestly what it kind of felt like. It felt like also, did this story happen a while ago? This whole fight with the creature, or did this happen between bookstore horror and this conversation that we're having now in this story, in Short Hoggers? It really feels like we're just jumping into a media res, where we're missing a section of the story between that while we were having that flashback in the unquiet past and present. There's a bit of stuff happening in the present day at the bookstore that we just didn't get because it just jumped into media res with them talking about what they experienced. So it's just it threw me off. I was like, what happened here? What? But yeah, you nailed it on the head there, gamer. It's yeah, no, just the plot demands this. So yeah, here we go. It just it comes out of Left Town.
That being said, there's nothing saying that the creature couldn't have survived the books just on his own, because they're just books.
I mean, you say that, but all right, we'll just next time we're at a bookstore, I'll just topple a bookshelf on top of you and see how you fare.
I mean, yes, the combined weight of the bookshelf is a lot, but you're not being hit by it all at the same time. Everything is falling off at different speeds. It isn't one solid block of weight. Everything, all the books inside have give. Even the shelves, if they're kind of not super stable, they'll give, especially if they're not screwed in, if they're just sitting on the little tabs.
Yeah, but
flip them out of the way, so it's less damaging than you would think. No, I wouldn't want it to happen to me, but me as a normal human being could probably survive it, so I'm sure this frickin' Taxamare could survive it too.
I mean, here's the other thing. Are you envisioning feeble-looking bookshelves with made of sheet metal, or are you picturing what I'm picturing, which is hardwood shelving units that are just toppling? Because heavy wood dropping on you is basically with that amount of hardcover books or books and stuff like that landing on something is probably going to be a tree hitting you, even a small tree.
Yes and no, because a tree is a solid lump of weight that doesn't shift.
Yeah, but with all the books, even with the books all hitting you in different intervals, that's basically death by 1,000 cuts. You're just getting pelted, and then poof, with the actual shelf itself.
Well, and we don't know if they actually get pelted with the shelf because we don't know how narrow the aisle is. True. So if the shelf falls over, it might only just fall enough to hit the other shelf, and just the books fall.
That's true. Yeah, I'm not 100% against you on this. I do agree. Bookshelves probably would.
Bitch, I could do it. I can handle it.
I can do this all day.
Yeah.
all right,
hear no bell.
Yeah. Next on Mythos Busters, we topple bookshelves on Gamer Yellow and see how long you last.
That's so good.
It's
I hate how awesome that is and how good that sounds.
Well, we got to continue the Mythos Busters skit from back when we did Baraska.
Is that what that was from?
Yeah, we did remember in Nebraska, I think it was the last part of Nebraska where we were questioning the vest he had, the bulletproof vest he had against a gun. And we referenced Mythos Busters.
That's so good. I hate that I forgot that, but I'm glad that I'm reminded of it now.
And that you're now the test subject.
Oh God, right? Shit.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I do agree with you. I don't think a healing amulet was necessary to
Probably
just
not.
throw in there from Left Town. I think a bookshelf isn't going to kill a supernatural lich creature.
No.
It might inconvenience it. That's about it. This isn't we're if it had been the bookshelves, all the bookshelves and the roof, super shredder style, that would have probably ended him. But yeah. Yeah. So that was just my thing. It's just when did this happen? Did they just not did we just skip over this? Well, because we were reading the Unquiet Past and Present, and now we're here, and that happened between the two other stories. But
basically, Kess saw the thing and then it disappeared, so it's possible it disappeared to chase the kids around and stuff at that point.
I guess
while they were just having a conversation before.
Yeah, and that's why they were in the bookstore to begin with. Was they actually, that's why they were up on the bookshelf. I think when they entered that story was they came from those book rooms.
Yep, that's entirely plausible.
Yeah. And then the next thing I have here is actually about the D&D aspect. So, dead bodies don't come back to life at the touch of some good luck Guga. That only happens in the movies and D&D games. D&D? Duncan raised his eyebrow. Yeah, Cass nodded, turning toward him. It's a role-playing game popular among humans. Now it's getting popular among Gurdons and Fairfolk. Heck, even my brother was playing it, and he's only 10. While you're at it, why don't you just explain to them that there's a misrepresentation of kobolds in D&D? Because they're clearly not the same type of kobolds as the ones in D&D.
That's true. Honestly, I was half expecting them to be it's a game where you take these 20-sided die and you roll them and you compare them to stats on your sheet.
Honestly, I'm not gonna lie. This bit of dialogue was really kind of it came off really advertisementally. It's yeah, it's a role-playing game popular among humans. It almost felt like the car phone skit from Kung Fury.
Yeah.
It's bit. Now you too can call for the cover to your car.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's just I just like that. It's the kid has never heard of D&D, and then Kess is yeah, actually it's a really good thing. Which is also funny because Kess is she's aware of D&D and stuff like that, and how it's really popular. She's definitely secretly a D&D player.
I don't think it's secret. She knows a lot about it.
But then later on with the short Hoggers thing, she's chastising Ellie Lambert for being an otaku and or being a weeb. It's and me and Mikey had commented about that with her referencing a Star Wars line and and calling out this one person for being a certain type of nerd when really she knows a lot about nerdy shit to begin with. So don't just throw shade at other nerds, man. But
that happens all the time.
I know, but it's so dumb.
Star Trek versus Star Wars.
Oh my god,
it happens all the time.
It's we're all nerds about something. So
yeah. This
has been a PSA for from Review Cultist. Don't nerd shade or don't nerd shame other nerds. Especially when y'all are a bunch of nerds yourselves in some aspect. So, but I digress. I'll move on to the next thing I have. So this is at the end of chapter 2, and I'll go into the quote here. Walking forward, a bofant hair apparition revealed itself to be a tall, spindly figure clad in a purple fuzzy robe and house slippers, with an oatmeal avocado crusted, cucumber-eyed face mask, covered covering its sharp, pointed features. What's all this now? Mrs. Mira Gregory peeled off her cucumber slices to reveal piercing black eyes, flickering with annoyance. It's late. You should all be in bed. Behind the startled group came a dull thud, or a dull thunk, as Duncan fell back against the front door, sinking to the floor in a dead faint. So, like, this is when, like, the door the door that like was holding something finally like opens up, and then it's revealed to be Mrs. Gregory. And I was just like, really? This whole chapter was a setup for a fake out.
It's kind of weird.
I got a chuckle out of it, but I was like, really? And I mean, like, there was a monster beyond that. Like, the monster still was there, but I just love that, like, this was all a setup for a gag. Like,
I mean, I'm for that.
Yeah, oh no, absolutely. It was just funny. It was just like womp womp. I also like that Duncan just like passed out from the frightful appearance of his aunt.
Yes.
But yeah, that's the end of chapter 2 for me. So, Mikey.
I'm good.
All right, Gamer.
What do I have? Absolutely nothing.
Really?
Yeah, I got nothing to say on that.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, we did cover some stuff earlier, so yeah.
Yeah.
All right, on to chapter 3, In Search of. So here's the quote I have. It was nearly midnight by the time Kess crawled into bed in the Gregory's guest room. Outside, the wind still howled while torrents of rain lashed the sidewalks and swirled into the streets. After a brief scowl at the sudden clatter of rain against the window glass, she drew the covers over the chin and peered up at the ornate scallop headboard.
It's weird, right?
Yeah, that's all I want to talk about. Like, yeah, it really is like the chin. No, this is actually a comment because like there's multiple times in this story specifically where it covers it. I like how this story addresses something we brought up from a previous story about the weather, like holding them back inside the house or inside the building, or keeping specifically Kess in the building and stuff like that. And I like that they kept like in this story they seem to actually like they do like have a couple of like scenes where they refer to the heavy rain and like it's still bad out there. And so like Kess really doesn't want to like go back to her cottage. So like she's staying at the guest room of this place. So I do like that they're actually this story at least pointedly points out that the rain and the storm is still like brewing out there and keeping Kess kind of inside or keeping Kess indoors. But and then my last thing for chapter 3 here is this quote here. This is from Kess, by the way, like as she talks to Dr. Ackern. It had to have been a ghost, Kess told Dr. Ackern shortly before he left for home. Or a djinn, even. That's why the police didn't find a corpse under all those books. Oh, now suddenly she believes in ghosts and shit. Like, up till before that, like she'd been... Now, mind you, I don't know exactly if she was skeptical in the bookstore horror story, or if she was skeptical like 3 years prior in the flashbacks when she was younger and like a little bit more inexperienced with this kind of stuff. So like maybe I'm just like drawing my ire on a younger version of Kess versus like the Kess that actually does believe in some of this bullshit.
I don't know. I'm pretty sure like in the bookstore she's like constantly saying no, that can't be real. Like, because she was trying to rationalize all the weird shit that was happening and didn't believe it.
Or is it that case of that we had brought up where it's like she's just denying what she fears? Like she's like, no, it can't be that. No, it can't be that. No, that would be too scary. But in her heart of hearts, she knows there's something supernatural afoot. Yeah. But yeah, I just love it. It's like I like when as soon as she starts breathing, like, oh, it had to be a ghost. Like, oh, now you believe in ghosts, bitch. But yeah. That's all I got for chapter 3. So, Mikey.
I'm good.
I'm
Gamer.
bad.
I'm bad. You moan.
But no, I actually have nothing to say.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, on to chapter 4, Le Expat or Le Expats. So I'm gonna start with this quote here. 15th of September, 2012. It was a Saturday afternoon in the local Swanwick Library, and Kess was frustrated. Instead of blazing headlines heralding the mystery of the 3 missing evacuee children, she found only a short paragraph stating that three of the ungrateful gutter snipes had taken French leave. So as soon as I got into this part, I was like, so we are in fact, so we're back into the flashback, but this time it's a progression of the flashback. Like before, like with the unquiet past and present, that was a flashback. This is like a sequel to that flashback because this is like basically like the next day or like a couple of days later, as she's like looking into like the story that was told to her by Madame Mosley and such about the 3 missing kids and such. Because I think at this point she was like, I think in Unpleasant Past and Present, she wanted to like look into stuff and like even like jot down into her for her journals and such. So she wanted to know more about those stories that she had heard from.
Yeah.
So again, it was just cool that like, oh, we're okay. We're now in a flashback, and I can determine because the previous story, An Unquiet Past and Present, was, I believe, the 5th of September, 2012, and this one's the 15th of September. So like about a week or more has passed since those events. So again, I'm all about like continuity with these stories. It's like, and like making sure like I'm on the right path or on the right page here. So, but the next thing I have here is when she inquired at the main desk as to why she could only find one article that cast such a disparaging light upon some young, possibly confused and frightened kids, the elderly hippopode librarian just sighed and shook her gray-maned head. So I had to look this one up again because again, it's a folklore. It seems to be some kind of like entity or creature referenced, and so a hippopode is from Greek mythology. They were a tribe of people with the lower half of a horse and the upper half of a human. Though think more like a satyr rather than a centaur. Like they had like basically their legs were horses, but they didn't have like a centaur body.
So it's a reverse minotaur.
Yeah, basically, yeah. But no, except a minotaur is a bull, whereas these are horses.
I get that.
Yeah,
Same style though.
Yeah, basically, yeah. No, because it's a centaur or it's a satyr. So like, except instead of it's a horse satyr rather than a goat satyr. Yeah. And they apparently are, at least like from scholars, they're apparently like an allegory in the myths for like greed and avarice because they are always like guarding hoards of treasure. Like they're very greedy creatures. Which actually I kind of find funny that like a librarian is this hippopode is a librarian because her hoard isn't like gold and treasures, it's books.
Knowledge.
Yeah, exactly. It's knowledge that she's guarding. But yeah, I learned a new mythological being today because I had never heard of a hippopode before. So, but I'll move on to the next thing. Kess grimaced slightly at the mention of Mayor Desiree. Or Desrosiers. The Einsel woman was the very definition of a politician who had tons of money and wealth, but not an ounce of sense in her perfectly coiffed head. So now we know that Mayor Desrosiers, and by association her daughter Vanessa, from the previous stories, is in fact an Einsel type of fairy. And then I have an update. I was like, well, I mean, perhaps Vanessa is a half Einsel and a half human based on the latter familial connection, whereas where apparently the mayor's the mayor's mother-in-law is a human. Later on it mentions that. So she's a half human, half fairy creature or being perhaps. But and then I'll move on to the next thing I have here. And there was even some talk about them running to join a skilk band. What is skilk? Did we bring this? Wait, hang on. Did we bring this up in? No, we didn't. No, this wasn't in the Ellie Lambert story. But like, I tried looking up skilk bands, skilk music, and I could not find anything. Like, is it? So I'm
Probably
very
completely unique to this setting then.
yeah. Like, is it like what happens when you mix ska and filk music? Filk being basically folk. So filk music is a type of folk music, but it's all like fandom. Like so, like it's like Star Trek or Lord of the Rings, like folk music, like made by
Enough nerds in this universe right now.
yeah, I know exactly. And then like, they just add ska to it to the mix, so it's skilk. Which, by the way, that sounds like a if that is what it is, that sounds really rad. Like ska-based filk music would be really cool. But I digress. The next thing I have here, confusion filled Kess's face. But why would they run back to England when the Blitz was still going on? She asked. That doesn't make any sense. Why not run further into fairy and go native, like the humans say? That right there, like that whole idea of like these kids escaping the Blitz in England during the World Wars, and falling into fairy, and then like have either running back to like trying to get back to England or going further into fairy into the realms of fairy and stuff. That 100% is a Vossen scenario waiting to happen, and I am writing shit down.
Fair enough.
Yeah, like that's
It doesn't seem too weird. Like, Kess is basically saying, like, why didn't they just run further into the realms of fairies instead of going back to Earth? It's like, because they only know Earth. Like, it's
yeah. Well,
do you run back towards what you know where you will probably die, or run forward into the unknown where you might die? Like, you
might die, or
you're screwed either way, because you're running into this weird fantasy world. You're trusting these people, these people from this other dimension that you don't even know about, and they could be lying to you. So you could be running towards your doom or away from it, or could be doom either way for all they know. So it doesn't seem too outrageous for them to consider wanting to go back, even though the Earth is being completely like wrecked.
Yeah, I think the difference is Kess is kind of treating it is like, why wouldn't they stay in this peaceful place and run back to their homeland, which is currently in like violence and turmoil? But then also, like, I think it even mentions later that like it's like, well, I mean, these kids were like traumatized. Like a lot of these people were traumatized during the Blitz and so during these wars because, like, so they even if they don't know if their parents are dead or not in the Blitz, like they still want to see if they can find their parents.
Plus, Kess is also from this world and knows that this world is quote unquote friendly.
Yeah.
So
whereas most of human civilization, most of human folklore is like, yeah, don't go to the ferry.
Yeah.
But yeah. Again, I love that idea of like like in setting up a Vossen game where you're either the kids who end up like oopsing into fairy, like the back rooms, or like basically, you know what? It's basically the plot of Narnia. Like they escape London and go into the countryside to an adoptive family. And find a magical doorway in the back of a cupboard and go into a fantasy world. Like that's basically fairy. Narnia is just fairy. I'm calling it now. Don't at me. But I'll move on.
Narnia's just fairy. Try to change my mind.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm just sitting there
sitting on the street.
Yeah. Sipping a coffee. Anyways, Hopes for a further interview, however, were soon dashed when one of Madame Mosley's daughters informed Kess that her mother was house sitting over in Swallowdale and wouldn't be home for a fortnight. Just gonna add Swallowdale to the running list of bird-centric names in this neck of fairy. Like we got Swanwick. There was a couple of other ones like Heron. There were other names. There were other bird-centric names in
sure
previous
there
stories.
were. Yeah, totally.
Shut
Don't
up.
worry. Yeah, we know there are.
But yeah, I'm just gonna add that to the bird list. It's a running. It was a joke from the Ellie Lambert story that me and Mikey covered. Gamer, you wouldn't get it.
Let's see. Yeah, fine.
Yeah.
See how it is.
Yep. But that's the end of my notes for chapter 4. So, Mikey.
Well, for chapter 4, let's see, we already talked about transition issue,
Yeah.
but this seems to be the beginning of a better version of the Ellie Lambert story. So unfortunately, for chapter 4 and chapter 5, it's like we've already read it because we have pretty well read it.
Yeah,
Um,
like chapter 4 and chapter 5 are definitely like just copy paste,
And-
at least partially copy pasted. So, yeah.
And even chapter 6, I know what's going to happen because they didn't
Yeah.
finish the Ellie Lambert story.
Yeah. That said, I do have to agree with you. Like, it does feel like it's going to be a better version because we're getting more context to what was happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is where I have an issue, which is that if the author has so many versions of the same story, why not just remove those old versions that aren't the definitive version?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
because it feels like we've gotten a lot of drafts of stories that end up being combined into a more definitive version, but we can still go back and read the draft. Like in an actual like story, you leave the draft on the cutting wood floor.
Yeah, or you'd update the entry on creepypasta.wiki and stuff like that. Yeah, I'm starting to see that because I did like earlier today. I did a like I went through the listings of MM Pratt's stories on creepypasta.wiki, and I found quite a number of them are just like rewrites or like they've been added onto from previous stories. So it's just like I'm gonna have to go through them and see which ones like are like older versions of previous ones, because like I feel like we're just going to keep rereading the same story over and over again.
Yeah, and I think we had that before with a different story where like there's only like 2 paragraphs that were new. The rest was just copy paste. Like
yeah, that was Summer Break and then Summer Break 2017.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I feel like there needs to be some form of consolidation.
I agree, honestly.
Because if you go as we did and read these out of order or how they were posted because we get the drafts first, then we end up reading the same thing over and over.
Yeah. Like I actually did see that like there's Ellie Lambert, there's The Last Day of October Short Hoggers, which is what we're getting into right now. And then there's a story called Short Hoggers in her listings. And I'm sure that it has some stuff that's added, but I worry that it's just going to be the Short Hoggers section of this story. So I don't think we're going to cover it because it feels like it's going to be more or less the same, and we've already touched on a lot of the stuff. So yeah.
Yeah. So unfortunately, because I knew the story and what was happening for chapters 4 and 5, I literally just skimmed over it.
Yeah,
like,
I was tempted
sentence
to.
here, sentence there. Yep, it's the same story. Like,
yeah, I didn't do that, but I was tempted to. I do get you. Like it's definitely one of those things. It's like I don't want to like, I don't want to disparage like going back to a previous story and like adding things to it and modifying it or adding more context around it, because like this has given us so much. This series of stories, these Last Day of Octobers, have given us a lot of context to some of the events that we read in the Ellie Lambert story. But it's just like, why wasn't that story just like modified to be this kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, if you know it's a copy, like you could, as an author, keep the page, but like make a new link to this saying at the top saying this is an outdated version.
Yeah.
Please
Well,
read this.
she does at the beginning of a lot of her stories, they do say like this is an early draft or this is an early version of this other story. She does have links for some of them in her like in the entries on Creepypasta.wiki. So
Yeah, but well, be nice to have a link to the newer one,
yeah,
just so that we don't have to rehash it over and over.
yeah. Especially since like as far as I can tell, like aside from like the story just being like added into another story is like with a story kind of wrapped around it. These stories, they really again, I read through like this one and I skimmed through most of Ellie Lambert again. So I'm like, this is now like my third time reading the same kind of like story and plot, but it really kind of felt like there was no real like changes. I even like there were some scenes where I was like, oh, did that happen that way in the last time I read this? And I went back to the Ellie Lambert story, and sure enough, it was the exact same paragraph. So it was like, yeah, there doesn't seem to be any changes in the stuff that's being ported from the old version.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the extra stuff that we're getting around it that kind of helps give us context, which is great, but it needs to be, or at least it feels like that should be like, like just like have the previous thing be modified to become a new story or to be incorporated rather than have like multiple separate drafts, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
In the Ellie Lambert one, was it also sort of like confusing with her like walking around talking to people, then all of a sudden she's at the party?
No, Ellie Lambert's starts at the party. Like the Ellie Lambert
Okay.
story starts directly as she is describing Ellie Lambert and then
Yes.
like showing her awkward. That's where it starts. Yeah.
Because honestly, like reading the first bit of Ellie Lambert, because I had a bunch of other stuff to do and I couldn't finish a full read at the time. I recall it like connecting better to that part that was copy and pasted here, where it's talking about Ellie Lambert.
Yeah.
Like it described why she was in town and why they're holding the party for her and stuff before the party instead of at the party, which is how it is here.
Yeah, I don't maybe that's mentioned later because like I don't think that anything really changed. Like anything was really like modified as far as I could tell, but I mean you did
because the whole story isn't copy and pasted. There's just a section of it that's copy and pasted. The whole I don't recall it starting the previous one starting with the description of Ellie Lambert right from the get-go.
Give me a second.
Maybe it did, but
I just read it last night. I think so. Save October. No, I want Ellie Lambert. That's what I want. So yeah, it starts. Ellie Lambert wasn't everything Kess was everything Kess wasn't. Short and stocky with a pudgy baby face.
okay, never mind then.
Yeah.
I misremembered, I guess.
It does, and then there is an author's note for Ellie Lambert. Like this is a much earlier version of Last Day of October, Short Hoggers. Originally, it was written for a short story writing contest for Chilling Tales for Dark Nights. Though the contest eventually went kaput, probably due to the sheer amount of entries and the staff eventually calling it quits due to losing interest or time. So it might, yeah. So like she wrote the Ellie Lambert bit and then went down later on incorporated it into this more full-fledged story, which is the Last Day of October stuff. So like I kind of get why she separated them, but at the same time, like it just felt like it should have been like kind of combined. It just should have been modified, kind of thing. I don't know. It's sort of a fickle thing, I guess, when you're an author, and you write a preliminary story to get ideas, and then you have an idea to like kind of incorporate that into a bigger story. Like you got to make that call. Do you remove the previous version, even though it's basically the same content that's going to be put in the larger story, or do you leave that as kind of a testament to the work you did earlier?
You'd also be removing any comments that you got on the first one,
That's
which are potentially
also
helpful.
Yeah, and actually, that's the thing that like she does seem to have a number of commenters that like stick around and help with like kind of give some help with her writing and stuff. So, or at least comment on the story like in a fair amount of detail. So, yeah, I could see like maybe not wanting to get rid of that. It's just and I mean like this is more of like a on an us thing kind of thing. It's just like, well, we're doing this for like we're trying to piece together the continuity. But we're running into these like multiple like early draft versions of stories. So, but that's more on us than her for that kind of thing. So, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's my actual thoughts for chapter 4 and 5.
Okay. Then that makes sense because yeah, chapter 4 and 5 are basically Ellie Lambert.
Yeah.
So yeah. Gamer.
Okay. Some of these I chimed in on, but I could probably say a little bit. When it starts describing Ellie, it's saying Ellie didn't mingle, but just stood in the far corner near the table of floral arrangements and local crafts, behavior that earned her a few curious looks. So, as an antisocial person myself, like I get it. In a party environment, I'd probably just hang on the edges with people I know, or if I was forced to go to a party where I knew no one, I would probably just ninja into the background to be left alone. So I get they're trying to make fun of her and all that, but I think her antisocialness is the least of her issues right now, considering that she's potentially a monster or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, again, like Vanessa, like in this one, I do feel like Vanessa. I mean, she is a teen, so she's like kind of like a bitch.
Yeah.
So like she's like it's that kind of like character, but like really does kind of like we get a little bit more sympathy initially for Ellie Lambert, and then like Vanessa comes off as very kind of like that snooty antagonistic type of character.
Yeah, for sure. And then my only other one for chapter 4 is in regards to Kess. She's in her house. She let the curtain drop and turned to consider the stacks of presents scattered hither and thither, including the accumulation of new pets from an anonymous sender named Smiley Face. Not a red flag at all.
No. Also, they all appear to be like magical woodland creatures because they are like very attentive and have almost like they don't talk, but they have like almost like a character to themselves.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. But that's all I got for 4.
Yeah, but yeah, Smiley Face is like, that doesn't sound like suspicious.
No, and she doesn't remark on that at all. It's like, this is fine.
Yeah,
free animals, hell yeah.
Yeah, free pets. Woo! Now I gotta buy.
I gotta pay for all of them now.
I was just thinking that. Yeah, now I gotta pay.
I gotta get a second job.
Oh my god, why? Yeah. All right, on to chapter 5, Short Hoggers. And yeah, so I have a few things that I actually like caught this time around because there is actually some context that we get again from the story that from the previous chapters in this story that were like added on. So we get a little bit more like there's some more details that were kind of like came to light to me. After, because otherwise this is basically again another section that's pulled directly from Ellie Lambert, and I'm pretty sure it's word for word. So, but I will dive into this part here with this first quote. It all started back a few years ago. I was among the Safrasia island population suddenly displaced due to the nearby volcano. Since Safrasia was a Merlian overseas territory, we were all granted full residency rights in the Merlian United Kingdom. Boys, we must go deeper. As this is now a flashback within a flashback.
Yeah, it is.
And in a dream, no less.
Yeah, it never leaves the dream yet, has it? No.
Like, so let's for reference. She she was dreaming this flashback in the guest room of the Gregory family.
After telling the story to her animals.
Telling the story, and the flashback is her telling her woodland animals from like 3 years prior this story that took place a few years prior from that, as she dozes off to sleep in the dream. I love, it's like, again, very Inception-esque.
A little bit, yeah.
Just a little bit.
It's a little bit too much, but it's fine.
Yeah. But then we get to this next thing here in the quotes. But on miserable wet nights, when the streets were generally deserted, something would wander near the apartment complex and sing in this phlegmy burble. Always it would be the same song, this bit of nonsense ditty about nobody liking this person, and this person saying, "Guess I'll go eat some worms then," or something to that effect. And I was like, oh shit, there's the connection to the Taxamare entity from the earlier chapters, the song. So from chapter 2, Skeeter said thoughtfully, went kind of like this. Nobody likes me, everybody hates me, guess I'll go eat worms. Kess froze, her eyes locked on Skeeter's face. Duncan, too, stared at his little brother, his face blanching a ghastly white. Big, fat, juicy ones, eensy, weensy, squeensy ones, see how they wiggle and squirm. So yeah, right off the, like, I didn't get this. I didn't really catch this reading the earlier chapters because it's been a couple of weeks since I read the Ellie Lambert story. But we then pull this in here, and we suddenly get context to the thing that has been stalking her throughout the years, basically. The short Hoggers is probably the same thing as the Taxamare. And I even actually have to wonder. So is this also? This might be me like going like a little bit even farther down the line. Is this also is Short Hoggers the Taxamare? But is it also the Hell Lion from when she was is the Hell Lion also the Short Hoggers? Because in An Unquiet Past and Present, the Hell Lion, I do in quotes, is sort of this like weird, creepy amalgam of things, like, and it comes through a portal to the Swanwick coast and plants that gem that Kess finds when she's like searching for driftwood, and then it kind of goes invisible, but is still clearly stalking her. And she goes to her cottage and closes the door, and locks the door because she gets an uneasy feeling. So is this the same creature that's like basically like it's getting around by going through those like those portal ways to find her?
Could be. I don't know why it's like harassing her specifically. I guess just because she picked it up.
Or just be like, maybe again, like she was roommates with the one roommate that summoned it in the first place, or kind of brought its attention in the first place. It could also be, again, like she said earlier in this story, you don't want to say something's name because it draws their attention and summons it. So like, is that what you were saying? You were getting at there, or
no?
Okay, well, that's what it kind of reminded. Like that's what it kind of sounded like. So it's like, yeah, like. Is she like, because she keeps like telling this story that she was told not to tell the story about? It's just drawing its attention. She's basically drawing aggro across dimensions.
It seems like a bad move on her part.
Yeah, but again, like this is when she's like skeptical and like doesn't believe in that kind of stuff. And now, like, I guess maybe these stories like kind of make her a believer. Yeah. But yeah, so. Again, like I just got like corkboard with red thread, just like tangled. I'm almost kind of tangled myself in the weeds here. It's just like, oh, that they said the thing. It connects to this other thing, and is this thing too? It's like But
that is something we need with these stories: is more things connecting together, because like a lot of stuff hasn't.
And actually, to further add on more red twine to something, we have the
Great.
next thing I have here. So this is after she left West Des Moines New, and moved to another place. But then it seemed like the thing came back again, or something horrid came back. And it's her roommate describing what the thing was, as to the authorities and such. Right over there, it was pressed up against the glass. Its face. It was like that Wiccan girl that got killed a year back in West Des Moines New, and yet it wasn't. Like a death mask without any eyes, with a nose and with the nose and lips all shriveled and rotted away. And I knew there was something hiding behind it, something even more terrible. For some reason, this part brought to mind, and I was like, is this also tied to the slug-like thing that was that had a human-like face? But it was this like black inky like slug thing that like streaked down the window in the way through the woods, where the when like the Chick Charney twin or triplets and Olivia and the elfin babysitter were like looking on and seeing this like thing just like kind of like streak down the window and then flop into their garden and disappear. It's like, is this all connected? Like, is everything connected?
It'd be kind of nice if everything is the same creature.
Yeah, it would be like really cool if like just like that's the sort of the droids of this story of these stories. Like in Star Wars, in Star Wars, the anchor characters of Star Wars is the droids because they're in every episode.
Yes, specifically R2D2 and C-3PO.
Yes, yeah. So yeah, like is this like, it would be really cool if all these stories are actually all talking about the same creature, just people have different names for it because it doesn't have a solid name.
Yeah, because every time someone sees it, they're like, "What the fuck is that? I don't know. I'm gonna call it this." K. Then it goes somewhere else.
Exactly, and then it's like, yeah, basically regional dialects, the game.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, that's what I got for chapter 5. So Mike, you said you didn't have anything for chapter 5, or do you?
No, I don't.
Okay. Gamer.
Okay.
As our fresh off the boat of the story.
I suppose. And my first one was just Inception. Next one. Says, well, the place I got in West Des Moines New, it certainly isn't the Ritz, but it wasn't a total nightmare, although we did find mushrooms growing on the top. Plus it had roaches as well as rats, not small ones. The big scary kind that tended to scurry over your face in the middle of the night. That sure sounds like a nightmare to me. Like, yeah. I suppose what someone deems a quote-unquote nightmare is dependent on how they normally live, but that's hell.
Yeah. It's a fixer-upper.
Yeah.
Just got like claw marks on the rats. I mean, again, it depends on like your like financial situation. Like, yeah. But yeah.
Specifically, the rats go for your face. Like, that seems like a nightmare.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's the definition of a nightmare scenario for where you have to live. But yeah. And then she goes on telling like her whole story about all the stuff that happened and how this thing is following her around and like killing things and stuff like that. Did it specifically say that it was killing like pets of hers and stuff like that? I don't recall.
I don't think so.
Yeah. It tells this huge ass long story to all of her animal friends. And then about this creature that's following her and presumably trying to kill her by any means necessary. And then it says her audience waited, but Kess had nothing more to say. At that point, all of her new animal friends panicked and tried to escape their cages, knowing their fates were sealed if they stayed with this haunted owner of theirs.
Yeah.
Which is what should have happened, probably.
Yeah.
Scared all the freaking animals. Because it does seem like they straight up understood her.
Yeah, again, like I brought this up in the Ellie Lambert story, but yeah, I definitely got like enchanted woodland creature vibes, like Disney princess vibes.
Yeah, but that's all I have left.
Oh, great. Then we move on to final thoughts. temporary final thoughts, since this is not a full story. Anyway, so far, I'm still partially
So far
going to
thoughts.
our mid thoughts. So far, I'm still going to partially recommend it. It moves the plot along in interesting ways, but there are so far there are quite a few instances of inconsistencies and like just kind of out of nowhere bits that like have no real good like transitionary moments that it kind of like hurts it for me. Like I like that we're finally getting some like context from some of the previous writings, and that it's moving the plot along because now we're getting to know we're getting where it seems like it's coming to a head. But I can't give it like a full recommendation because like it does have some flaws in the writing and in like how it's presented. So I'm gonna partially recommend it for now. I still look forward to the last 4 chapters of the story, which we will cover next week. But right now, it's still sitting at a partial recommendation for me. Mikey, D stands for evil.
All right. Well, I did like that we got some new stuff, even though it did add some confusion, and there were transition issues and stuff like that. And I dislike that we ended up reading the same story over again, though that's partially Review Cult's fault.
How dare you, sir? I
You're
was
wrong. It's entirely his fault.
How could
but until we reach the rest of the story, I'm only going to give it this a partial.
That's fair. I'm really hoping by the end of this, like by the end of this chat of this story specifically, we find out exactly what a fire witch is, because so in the comment that was given to us by MM Pratt 99 on summer break, they gave us they actually did like send us this story as a link, the last day of October. Whether or not that was like she just meant the first entry, but like we're here, there's like multiple stories that like you can't just stop at the first one. So but she like they said like the last day of October referenced was a fire witch story. So like I don't know who the fire witch is. Is it actually Kess? Is it like one of the monsters? Like what is like it seemed like the monster, like the thing, the light, the red light that like went into that one character's eye and into their head. That might have been like what a fire witch was, but it wasn't like told that. And then we find out even in this story that thing that ate that Einsel girl was actually the same kind of thing that the Chanterelles were, the Ataxamare, which might also
Uncle
be
assumed that.
Yeah, assumed that.
We don't know.
But then it also seems like that thing is also like the short hoggers, which might also be the Hell Lion. And it's like I'm hearing a lot of other names. I'm not hearing Fire Witch. So right now this story is on Fire Witch watch for me.
Nice.
Because I was promised the story was a story about a fire witch, and I have yet to really discern where that is. Maybe I missed it, but yeah. So, but yeah, I'm not blaming MM Pratt, but I will not go quietly under the bus.
That's fine. Loudly's fine with me. Yeah. As long as you're under the bus.
So, sorry, what was your recommendation there, Gamer or Mikey?
That was partial.
Partial? Okay. And Gamer?
Well, for me, I thankfully had the foresight to not read Ellie Lambert.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah. So that's actually a boon for me over here, because I didn't have the confusion that you guys had, or / annoyance of having to read the same thing twice, because I just read it once and it was fine.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have some sort of future premonition situation, I guess. I don't know.
It certainly wasn't because you were busy with life things.
No, of course not.
They couldn't make couldn't make it that recording.
No, of course not. It's totally because I knew. I felt it. Or I was smart enough to already have read this entire series of stories and I know which bow out.
Oh, that definitely did not happen.
How
Don't
do you
even
know?
lie.
How do you know?
I know you, and when you read these stories, gamer.
I
If
never
I'm going
read
under this
these
bus, I'm
last
tossing
seconds.
you under the bus.
Yeah.
I'm tossing you under the cab next to the bus.
I never ever read these last seconds.
Certainly not like the night of, and possibly the
No.
morning, possibly an hour before we record.
That's only happened a couple of dozen times. It's fine. Okay, regardless.
Yeah, as the audience continues to listen to us just bicker like a goddamn old couple.
I mean, that's fine. They should be used to it by now.
Yeah.
But yeah, the way that this story went, it went okay. The only problem I really had was the weird transitions that happened throughout the story, specifically in the dream, the first dream, not the dream within the dream, just the dream.
Not the second dream, Warframe.
No. Oh, I'm proud of you. But no, like it went all right, and we're getting some answers, sort of. Bringing up new creatures that might be the same creature. Who knows? But yeah, some transitions would make the story better, but it was okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, still partial because it went okay. I'm curious how it's going to end off. Whether it's going to answer the questions that we have, or just raise more questions, which is what often happens, it seems.
Well, I know that the 6th chapter is probably going to be the tail end of the Ellie Lambert story, and so we'll then have 3 chapters that actually cover some new material after the fact. So it won't be just me and Mikey just I got nothing. No, I got nothing. We already covered this. We should actually have some new material to actually comment on. It won't just be a gamer backpacking us the whole time. But yeah, I guess that'll do it for this week's episode. So tune in next week, or tune in next episode, whenever you listen to this, for the exciting conclusion of the last day of October. Short Hoggers, and actually the last day of October series of stories in general, because this is the last one. So it's all been leading up to this
Day of October.
Yeah, we will. Well, this will get posted in the last week of October.
Oh god,
Which is
close enough.
It's like. Actually, no. I think. Hang on, because is it a Thursday? The last day of October. Oh my god, it is! This will literally be dropping on the last episode. Will be dropping on the last day of October.
Exciting.
That is amazing.
As it should be.
Yeah, I totally didn't plan for that. Nope. Totally didn't schedule these so that it would land on that. Nope.
Never. Why would you do that?
All right, before our set falls apart, and let's finish up this thing. So if you like what you heard, or if you didn't, leave us a comment in the comment section below where this gets posted. We're all on Twitter. Mikey's at the stands for evil. The Gamer and Yell is at the Gamer and Yell, but without that W at the end because the name is very long. And I'm at Review Cultist. I'm also on Blue Sky at Review Cultist, so you can send me stuff there. You can also send us emails at aldentebrigamortis@gmail.com. That's ALDENTERIGAMORTIS@gmail.com. Where you can also leave us suggestions for other creepypastas, SCPs, spooky things. You creep it, we'll peep it.
Yeah!
And if you'd like to help support our show financially, you can go to Patreon, select the backer tier you'd like to support us at. We have we have extra content, early access, and special episodes. To all our patrons that support the show, thank you immensely. You're helping keep those hosting bills at bay, and as always, we very much appreciate that. And to all our listeners and the authors of these stories, thank you immensely, because without your listenership, it'd be like screaming into the void. And without your authorship, without these stories that we read and get confused by and create large cork boards with red cord that like go to one story to another to try and figure out connective tissues and such like that and get lost in the weeds. We really wouldn't have much of a show because we have nothing to talk about. So thank you. Until next time, I have been your host, Review Cultist.
I'm Mikey. The E stands for evil.
I'm the gamer in yellow.
And this has been Al Dente Rigamortis. Sleep well.